has its hand wrapped around my neck and it's got me backed up in that corner. I'm being forced to make decisions. Do you take that little bit of money that you got in your pocket and feed that little boy who is now 3 years old that you brought into this world to fix you? Or do you feed your disease? And as you guys know, at that point, I had already lost the power of choice. The real crime of the disease of alcoholism is not that we lose the power of choice. It's that the people around us lose the power of choice as well. See, that little boy had to go to bed hungry on more than one occasion. And I didn't just steal food out of that little boy's mouth. I didn't just steal money out of his piggy bank. I stole the most priceless possessions that you can ever steal from a child, or from another human being for that fact. I stole his serenity, and I stole his security. He began living that life of a child being raised by an alcoholic parent. I remember one day in particular, I'm trying to figure out what to do to be a good mom, because see, I have no idea, but I always try and mirror what I see other people doing, and it's a Saturday morning. I thought, oh, good moms, they play ball with their kids. Yeah, that's right, okay. So I go into the refrigerator and I'm rooting around, and sure enough, I find a beer left. I pour it in a plastic cup because I can't even go outside without that now. And I don't want my neighbors to see me at 10 o'clock in the morning with a beer. So I pour it in this plastic cup. We go outside, we take the ball out. I sit my little cup on the concrete stoop and I begin throwing the ball back and forth with my son. He's 4 years old at this time, and he doesn't have very good aim, and he throws that ball and he hits that cup and it knocks that beer over. And without even any thought at all, I ran over there as if my life depended on it and started scooping that beer and the dirt and the rocks and all the filth back into that cup. And I'm shaking like this, and I'm putting that cup up to my hands, and I am siphoning that beer through the rock and the dirt and the filth, and I'm spitting it back out on the ground, and I look up just in time to see those little eyes. The eyes of a child that is being haunted by the disease of alcoholism. The silent scream of a child that knows something's not right in their world, but they have absolutely no idea what's going on. I would love to tell you that's what got me into AA. But see, at that time, I didn't even know you guys really existed. I had no idea what AA was. And at that time, I didn't pick up the phone, I picked up the bottle. And that's exactly what I did. As I picked up the bottle, I began trying to drink myself to death. I began to drink with a new hate and a new vengeance that I had never known in my life. But to prove to you what Alcoholics Anonymous can do is this weekend, this Friday and Saturday, my son is going to be home. See, I taught him a little too well to follow his dreams, and he works out in Missouri as a firefighter, and he welds on emergency helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. And I don't get to see him as often as I would like to now. But what happened because of you is the man he turned out to be. I found out last week that he was going to be home this weekend. And of course, my initial response was one of sadness that I wasn't going to see him. But what's important is that I tell you his response. When I said, oh, baby, I'm so sorry I won't be there. I said, I'm going to be, in Orlando at a conference. I'm so sorry. And without hesitation, he said, Mom, don't be sorry. What you people do in there saves lives. There's somebody that needs to hear what you have to say. See, Mom, you've already saved mine. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous and God do. Not me, because left on my own, I would have destroyed that boy's life. And that's exactly what I was doing at this point in time. I was living from blackout to blackout. I was just living in a horrible way, always trying to figure out how to get home, where I was, what was going on. But what happened to me was the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous reached out before I even knew it existed. There was a gentleman in my hometown that saw what was going on in my life. And he had given me his business card. And on the front of it, it had the crisis hotline. And on the back, it had, on the front, it had his name and phone number. And on the back, it had the crisis hotline. And in my alcoholic arrogance, when he gave it to me, I thought, what do I need this for? And I'd thrown it on my kitchen counter. Well, the day came when I was full of enough pain that I picked up that card and I gave him a call. And I said, "Hi, Jerry, this is Chris. I don't know what's going on, but I think I need some help." And he said, "Are you ready to quit drinking?" And I didn't really know what to tell him, because see, I'd tried to quit drinking 1,000,000 times on my own. So I was as honest as I could be, and I said, "Jerry, I don't know if I'm ready to quit drinking, but I'm ready to quit suffering." And thank God that was enough for him. Thank God that was enough for him. Jerry 12-stepped me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous from that phone call. Thank God he did not expect me to have some false bravado that said, "Yes, I'll never drink again." He knew I couldn't promise him that. And I must tell you, that very night, Jerry had been sitting in his apartment. He was 6 years away from his last drink. He had been a potter by trade, and he had been involved in a car accident, and his hands had been crippled up because of it. And he had cried out to the God of his understanding, "If this is all there is to sobriety, I might as well drink." And within 30 seconds, the phone rang, and I was asking for help. Jerry just celebrated 22 years of continuous sobriety last January. That's how the God of my understanding works. That phone call may have had nothing to do with my recovery. It may have had everything to do with his. And that's why when the girls that I sponsor say, "Oh, I hate to call you about the little things. I know how busy you are." I'm like, "Please call me. You never know what you may be interrupting. You may be interrupting my latest suicide plans." Because I have gone to that dark of a spot in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 12-stepped into AA. Walked into my first meeting, absolutely loved what I saw. Wasn't that you were all happy, joyous, and free. It was that there was about 35 people in the room, and they all appeared to be men. I am shopping for my next ex-husband at my first AA meeting. That is how sincere I was when I came to all of you. But apparently they had called ahead, because I walked in and it seemed like the entire room went woof, and I spotted her. One woman sitting clear up front. But my keen alcoholic mind sized her up right away. She appeared to be 112 years old, so I wrote her off as competition. Little did I know she had other plans. She very quickly scurried up to me, introduced herself, said, "Hi, I'm Mary Kay, and I'll be your sponsor." I had no idea what that was, didn't know if I wanted one, but see, I was afraid to ask. All I started hearing in your rooms was that you had to be powerless and you had to have God. And see, that whole God thing was so foreign to me, because I just couldn't believe in things that I couldn't see. But I was so afraid if I told you these things and I told you the truth, that I didn't understand anything that you were saying, that you would think I was stupid and you would think I was dumb and you would see how dark and how black and broken I really was. So I kept it all to myself. And I've learned in the time that I've been here, that's like walking into an ER with a gunshot wound right here in your chest. And when the triage nurse says to you, "Can I help you? What's wrong?" You say, "Yeah, I just got a little scratch here." And she says, "Okay, fine. Well, you go sit down over there and we'll get to you as soon as we can." You're liable to die from what you aren't showing them. Alcoholics Anonymous works the same way. I almost died from what I was not showing you. See, I became a spiritual parasite. I would memorize what you said about your God, and I would spit it back at you at the next meeting. I took fake it till you make it to an art form. And what happened is, you can't base a spiritual way of life on a lie, and that's what AA is. And at 4 years away from my last drink, I had a very similar thought to Jerry's. I found myself laying on my bedroom floor, wrapped in a purple robe, soaked in my own sweat, shaken worse than I had ever shook in my entire life, thinking the only solution to what is wrong with me is eating a bullet. See, that's where I go. And what I have been doing, I know now, is I've been practicing what I lovingly now call buffet AA. I had been hanging out in the fellowship of AA, doing a little bit of this step, doing a little bit of that step, doing just enough to get by. And what that did for me was it provided a little bit of relief. But what I have found is that my recovery comes from the program of action, as it's outlined in our first 164 pages. I was dying of untreated alcoholism in the rooms of AA 4 years away from my last drink and didn't even know it. But because I had done what you guys had kept telling me to do, and I had kept showing up at meetings, I had never gotten too far away from you. The hand of AA one more time reached out to me and called me and said, "How you doing?" And I finally had the desperation absolutely necessary to tell you the truth. But what I found out was you guys already knew how I was doing. You literally 12-stepped me back into your program even though I had never left. You took me to a meeting that night and told me I had to get real and I had to get honest. I finally had the desperation absolutely necessary for an agnostic of my type to become willing to believe. And that is what happened. Did I come to believe in that night? No, I didn't. But see, what happened during the course of those events was a line had popped into my head from a book called Dante's Inferno. And it said the hottest place in hell is reserved for those who in times of crisis choose to sit on the fence. And I knew I had been a fence sitter in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for 4 years. I only had 2 choices left. I could get real or I could die. And so I got as real with you as I could possibly get. I finally told my sponsor everything I thought, felt, and believed. And I started feeling progress, and it wasn't long after that she took critically ill and couldn't sponsor me anymore. And I got very scared, and so what I did was I went to the neighboring town where my father was still living at that time and went to every AA meeting. I took a week off work and went to every AA meeting I could possibly go to. Any woman that would look my way, I became like the AA octopus, and I was like, "Help me, I'm dying." You know, I was just crazy. But I knew left on my own, I was going to die. And so God put the right people with the right message at the right time in my life. These women showed me how they had walked through the book. I took that information back home, and there were 3 other women at that point in my city that were dying of untreated alcoholism. And I told them, I said, "These ladies say we'll be okay if we just do what this book says. What do we have to lose?" And we were the craziest bucket of sick you ever laid eyes on. I mean, we had kids running everywhere. We were insane. But what we did was before each meeting we prayed. And we opened up that book to the title page, and when it asked us a question, we answered it to each other. When it told us to pray, we prayed. When it told us to write, we wrote. When it told us to share, we shared. And what I learned is that when action and willingness come together, God's grace literally erupts. Because that has been 12 years ago, and 3 out of the 4 of us have maintained continuous sobriety in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know about Orlando, but I certainly know back home we don't have a 75% success rate. So when somebody calls me a big book thumper, I say thank you, because that is the best plan I have. I'd love to tell you I've skipped through my sobriety, happy, joyous, and free ever since then, but that would not exactly be the truth. What has happened to me since that time is that because of you guys, you taught me how to do some things different, and at 5 years sober, I was able to buy a little tiny beat-up house for my son and I, and it may not have been much, but boy, it was ours, and I was so proud of that thing. And at 7 years sober, that house burned down due to an electrical fire. Thought it was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, and wound up being one of those biggest gifts wrapped in sorrow I could have ever gotten. Because you see, at that time, I was searching desperately for this God of my understanding, and I just couldn't get it. You know, I would try and pray and meditate at that point in my life, and I'd sit cross-legged on a cushion and chant Om, because I thought that's what I had to do. And that hamster would come to visit and start chattering, and I just couldn't do it. And